So I want to thank Cheryl Seam, who I met in Chicago in November, for inviting me to come. And in some senses, I feel a little bit like a fish out of water, but you'll see where the connection is to digital humanities in a few minutes. I'm the director of a program. It's a relatively new program at the University of Cincinnati that's called UC Forward. And it's about promoting collaboration and cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary teams across the faculty, and offering courses that are team taught for students. And it's a pretty radical program for Cincinnati. It is not cost effective to teach in teams, quite the opposite. And so that's been a kind of hurdle. And it began when faculty, around 2007, from engineering, from design, from economics, marketing, got together to participate in the solar decathlon. And they built this solar-powered thing that they got to display on the Capitol Mall in Washington, D.C. with their students. And as Lisa was just saying, it was fun. They'd never really experienced that level of fun in a classroom, and it was because it was team taught. So they began to brainstorm, how can we do more of this? And a plot hatched. And faculty, in a self-organizing system, developed this concept of asking the provost for money. What a novel concept. That would sort of backfill with adjuncts so that they could afford to have 7 to 10 students assigned, because they're cross-listing these courses all over the campus, and each section only draws maybe 10, right? So they thought this would be the way to go. By this point, 2009 or so, this UC Forward had developed their Innovation Council. And on this council were not just faculty, but some department chairs and some associate deans. So they were getting buy-in at a pretty high level. Again, just self-organizing, completely off the charts, holding their meetings, plotting and strategizing, how can we teach across the disciplines here? And by 2009, they had persuaded the provost to start this program. It didn't fully get funded until 2011, and this is actually the first year that we've been able to offer a competition for faculty teams from multiple disciplines to come forward with a proposal. And so that's what I'm going to talk about, but the digital humanities actually played a pretty big part in my experience at the university here. So, Only Connect, creating a collaborative faculty network at the University of Cincinnati using social network analysis, and that's sort of the connection here. So UC Forward then consists of these courses, which I'll describe in a few moments. It also has, though, collected other examples across the campus of where faculty are already profitably teaching together across the disciplines. So these certificate programs, we have about 7 certificate programs that are cross-disciplinary, so bioethics, medical humanities, minority health. Those are examples of certificate programs. You might think of them as minors. They're sort of equivalent, where students take between 5 and even 10 courses outside of their major, beyond their breadth of knowledge classes, in a particular area. And so this is another way to get this transdisciplinary experience, is if you take a course from anthro and then another course from biology, and you're sort of seeing how they go together yourself as you traverse through this certificate. And then we have centers and collaboratives, and these are rather mature places, and they usually are physical places, where faculty have made a commitment to teach together, to research together, and to provide corporate consulting. So they have clients. And that is where most of the early UC Forward experiments took place, were in those collaboratives. And I'll show you some examples in a moment. We're really lucky to have a design, architecture, art, and planning school or college, DAP as we call it, because the design thinking system or process of taking a student through the inquiry from the moment of wondering, I wonder what could solve this problem out there in the real world, to fruition, to an innovation. And so they've used design planning in all sorts of fields for many, 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 many years. And so UC Forward is able to leverage that kind of expertise of bringing students to think about a problem in this way. And a real world problem, as you can see here on the right, is usually the focal point of the course. And then you have a professor and you have an outside consultant or client or partner. It could be a school, it could be an association, it could be a corporate entity like Procter & Gamble or Kroger Food. Kroger Food is a good example here. They hired one of our professors to work on this problem of food deserts. There's areas of Cincinnati that they're just never going to build a major grocery store. I'm sorry, they're just never going to do it. There's no parking, their trucks can't get through those streets, it's dangerous. They're never going to do it. So can you help us reimagine convenience stores? So that was the problem for 15 weeks, right? With a variety of students, you have those really red dots should be in different colors so that you have different expertise. They're coming with some disciplinary knowledge already, and so they represent that discipline within their group, and they tackle it. They tackle it using interdisciplinary methods. They tackle it using complex problem-solving methodologies, and they learn how to become a high-performance team. I want to introduce this, and I hope this works, by showing a short video. Let's see. This is our website, uc.edu/forward. And how do I press the start button there? Yeah, there you go. This is now our president. He was provost at the time when UC Forward first got started.
I've had many conversations around the entire university community with all the colleges. And one common theme that's come out of all those conversations is that the cooperative and experiential learning aspect of UC is something that we are very proud of.
I don't think that you can educate the students of today based on didactic lectures where you're just having the students sit in a room and you read a book and you're delivering the information and then they're regurgitating it back.
Businesses no longer can operate in silos. We need to prepare the future business leaders to be thinking differently, because the world is completely different today than it was 20 years ago.
And so we have a new generation of students who understand that their education is both to make a living and have a life, but also to make a difference.
One of the great successes at UC has been the Live Well Collaborative. And what UC Forward is really intending to do is to take that experiment, which is so exciting, really a pioneering example of how you take faculty and students from different colleges and focus them on problems, and to move that beyond the first few colleges that have been involved in the Live Well Collaborative.
UC Forward is meant to be a complement to exist between the curriculum and co-op. It's an interdisciplinary experience that guarantees that students will work with companies as part of a team with multiple disciplines, something they may or may not do through their co-op experience.
Our industry partners are very interested in fostering the talent of our students, so that connection with industry is critical.
What interdisciplinary education has allowed me to do is have that opposite the co-op, where I'm able to test new ideas in these projects that I wouldn't necessarily be able to use in the real world. And what this has opened the door for me is to be able to go to a company and to have a whole portfolio of these experiences. So that I'm able to join a company or join a firm and be able to work creatively as an innovation agent.
They will also develop a new level of poise and confidence that they can tackle issues, difficult, messy issues, because they've already done that through these experiences.
While I was in Tanzania, I worked with multiple other disciplines. That's something that often happens in architectural projects. But in the U.S., we have much more sort of a format for how it works. So you would send an email to the electrician, and they would come out and follow all the rules. Where in Tanzania, we were sort of making them up as we went.
So the very simple notion that by collaborating together as human beings we come up with innovative and creative solutions, new ways of thinking, is not a new idea. But what really is now invading how we teach and how we engage students is the collaboration and partnership in the classroom are also very good things.
It's definitely given me leadership opportunities. I've been able to lead groups and even help learn how to delegate things, whereas before I was definitely a one-man band, and the collaborative experience has definitely helped me.
I really hope that this has brought to life what's so exciting about interdisciplinary work and innovation here at UC. These are just a few of the examples of what can be accomplished with the energy and passion of our faculty and our students. Our message is that UC is the place to do this, that we are advanced in these efforts, and we fully intend to leverage all of our energy and expertise as we move forward towards UC 2019.
The blueprint for the future will challenge us to transform UC into one of the best universities in the world.
So you can see that at some point here in 2011, the university at the highest levels is buying into a concept of collaboration across the disciplines. And this was a very important turning point, I think, for the experience of the faculty in the Innovation Council. And they were authorized to hire a director. And I joined the university October 1st as the first director of this program of UC Forward. So the way I pitch it when I'm talking to students, because this is about pedagogy primarily. This is not on the research side, although we promote and support centers and collaboratives in their research efforts. Primarily we're about giving students an experience that is somewhere between their breadth of knowledge classes, their disciplinary knowledge, and their co-op experience. And it's a kind of capstone in between all of those spaces. So when I talk to students, I say, you know, when you're a freshman and you're thinking about a major, you sort of knock on all these doors, you go to different classes, and you walk in and you're sort of deciding whether to go any further into the house. You know, they're row houses, the different disciplines, and so you try one, and you might even get comfortable and sit in the front room, and you might even go into the kitchen, you know, for a little while. But then you decide you're going to leave and go to another one. And finally, you find a place where you may take the dining room and the kitchen and go upstairs to the first bedroom, the second bedroom, third bedroom as you go through your classes. And you finally find the bedroom that's just right for you. And that's where you want to live. And that is the general course of study for most students, is that they'll take their breadth of knowledge and they will go in some of these other rooms and maybe even a little further in, but primarily they only stay in the one house. And when we invite them into UC Forward, we say, we'd like to show you this kind of a space where you come in the door, but it's a commons. Does that sound a little familiar to this crowd? Yeah? All right, so we invite them into this space where each of these students comes with their disciplinary background, providing expertise, but learning how to cooperate, how to troubleshoot problems in groups, how to explicitly work in groups with training, how to solve problems. In other words, the kinds of skills that in our interviews with co-op supervisors, we find they're perfectly happy with the way we've trained the student in the discipline. They just don't know how to work in teams, or they don't know how to troubleshoot personality problems even. They don't have those soft skills. So we want them to get an experience where they're going to be challenged intellectually and where they'll get the opportunity to work with diverse groups of people. So there are many problems, of course, in the world that demand a transdisciplinary experience. You can't solve them without going to a number of different experiences and disciplines to get some answers. And so when we think about the kinds of big questions that Dr. Berman, Francine Berman, was talking to us about by remote yesterday, her digitally driven research would be comparable here in the UC Forward course to a great multidisciplinary topic. What is the impact of global warming was on her slide. How will natural disasters impact urban centers? How do we harness the power of community? This is relevant real-world research in your domains, and it's also perfectly at home in transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary studies at the university. When we look at this just sort of abstract art, if you want to think of it that way, you could look at the green as the professors and the other circles, the blue circles, as the students. And some of them are sort of disconnected. They're out of the orbits. They're not fully integrated into, let's say, a major yet. They may become orbital around a major, this being the professor that they're attracted to, like a moon to the sun. Or a planet, rather. But they also then are interacting with other disciplines or other professors. And in a UC Forward course, they're going to be impacted in an energetic way by the experience. So here are the characteristics of a UC Forward course. And right now, we have two kinds. We have funded ones that got some of this money. They can compete as a team for up to $10,000. And we had 12 last year and 12 this year. And then we also have the unfunded ones that are solo taught, but that also share these characteristics. Oops, why did it go forward? On its own. All right. So they're problem-centered projects. Problem-centered or inquiry-based is another word for that. And often with an outside client or partner like the Kroger company for the inquiry I explained. They're multidisciplinary, taught by faculty from many different fields. There's group work and collaboration skills, in other words, active learning, so that they aren't just being lectured to, but they're actually learning by doing. We also call that experiential learning with the reflection piece. Afterwards. And this, Amanda yesterday brilliantly demonstrated the difference between a lecture and being kind of lectured to and being able to talk and make and teach and play in that camp style. And that's what we're looking for in a UC Forward class pedagogically. And Professor Baumgartner yesterday in her history projects at the College of Worcester also showed that if you give students a problem, an inquiry, and they were doing it digitally, finding those audio oral interviews and then being able to transcribe those into something that other people can see and hear, that kind of problem-centered experience is very exciting for students. They're going, perhaps, we hope, to learn more. And so these courses also have a sort of discovery or an innovation or solution orientation, and sometimes with deliverables to those partners who've sponsored the studio. And the systems that are in place to bring students through that inquiry include design thinking, systems thinking, appreciative inquiry, business plan innovation, the scientific method with hypotheses, of course, and prototyping in the engineering side. So let me give you some examples. The Live Well Collaborative, which was mentioned by our president in the video, they worked this year on the Aging Traveler Studio, and they designed, instead of having, you know, those wheelchairs for people who can't really walk those long distances, they figured out a kind of futuristic kind of vehicle, a personal vehicle that will, that you don't need someone to push you. to serve that purpose. And it was sponsored by the Boeing company. So they had interest in what Live Well students can imagine. In the the photograph at the top, you see students trying on hospital gowns. So they went into the hospital with nursing faculty, industrial design faculty, and they tried to reimagine the hospital gown, which kind of needs redesigning, and they even had a fashion show, which was terrific. Another example is from a class that's going to be going to China. So the faculty are from planning, from industrial design, and environmental engineering, and they're taking students, they're going to be going to China, working on water waste, solid waste treatment, low carbon communities, studying different villages, working with Chinese students as an interchange. Another class like that it's taken over 200 students and professors in the last 8 years to Tanzania, and they built a medical center there, the students did, and they continued to revisit it. And this time they went with a journalism professor who brought back some true stories from Tanzania that they're working on. So why do we invest in collaboration? Because, as Brian said yesterday, collaboration is not an end in itself, all right? So why would we want them to collaborate? In UC Forward, first of all, in that one class, it is possible that the faculty will want to continue to research together and get grants from the outside. It is possible they will want to continue to teach together but develop new classes that may become a certificate program in that space between the disciplines. It is possible they will want to found a collaborative or a center and research together, teach together, and consult. And it's, of course, possible that they will make publications together or presentations at conferences and continue to give University of Cincinnati some more visibility, and that's a good thing too. So that is sort of the long-term investment in strategy for UC Forward. So why am I here? Besides the topic of the collaboration. Well, I just see so many parallels between digital humanities and transdisciplinary studies in terms of the kinds of issues that we have in getting buy-in from faculty and getting off the ground in a university setting. So to start with the positive, we have in common collaboration as a sort of mode of practice, the problem, the inquiry, or the project-based aspect, and the experiential or active learning pedagogy. But the challenges are also in common, and these are puzzling to me sometimes. There's a huge defensiveness against interdisciplinarity when I talk to groups of faculty. It's fine one-on-one, but if you get them en masse, they feel threatened, and it may be that it's money that's being channeled away from the departments, right? But there's this sort of defensiveness, and it's a hard nut to crack, and I suspect that there's that same defensiveness in digital humanities and scholarship. There's skepticism about the value and the quality, particularly when I'm trying to really recruit the best faculty who have been in their discipline most of their career or all of their career and are pretty well known for that. They don't see how that participation in UC Forward can be valuable to them because it dilutes the purity of their research. It's applied. It's being applied to solving a real world problem, which for humanities is a dilution. We're about purity. And it's really frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. It's complicated to explain the whole idea of transdisciplinarity in the same way that it may be difficult, I think, for digital humanists or digital scholarship to just get the beginning of the conversation started. It's a little bit slow. It's not instantly like, oh, I get it. And it requires an investment in faculty training. Faculty really don't know how to run these kinds of classes. I didn't know how, and it takes some training and investment of time more than money. It also demands smaller class sizes, which I think we share. Being able to do things, really directly one-on-one with a small group of students is expensive. And it's difficult to assess against traditional norms. So there's a lot of student-directed work in the class. In fact, the last 6 weeks are basically their group work, and they get to just work in their groups. So when you say, were their lectures clear, did they seem very organized? Well, we want to leave room for self-organization and for sort of little miracles to happen, and not chart out every single second of the day. And so even those kinds of measures that we think of as standard for what is good teaching are different for UC Forward and for all active learning pedagogies. And then, as I said, it's expensive. So when I got to Cincinnati then, there's of course this core of faculty and staff who were already engaged in the Innovation Council. Most of them were already in collaboratives and teaching studios through those collaboratives. And even though they had been very outspoken about trying to get us money to get more participation from more disciplines, they didn't apply for the money, really. Not a lot of them did. They wanted to open it up. They're set. So we went around and sort of needed to find and recruit faculty for this new competition. So I asked, well, where can I find faculty who are inclined towards collaboration across disciplines, who use project-based or inquiry-based active learning pedagogies? And it occurred to me that your community, this community, might have some answers for me. Now, as it turned out, in November, I started the job in October. In November, I attended the Chicago Colloquium, and that's where I met Cheryl, and I was presenting on my own little solo, non-collaborative digital humanities project, which is the social network analysis of Alexander the Great. And so I'm going to just digress for a moment and show you my little sample, and then you'll see why in a few minutes. So this is my work that I did using NodeXL. It's a Excel template, and it's free download, free software. And I inputted about 400 colleagues of Alexander the Great from 4th century BC, and the connections, the ties, the links to all of those men, and between those men turned out to be about 1,028 edges or links or ties. So I inputted these, and then I started exploring it, and I was sort of getting frustrated, and I was looking at it, this was last summer, feeling like I've done this, and this is beautiful. Like, I just love that one, which looks just like his hair, right? Beautiful, but what does it mean, and what am I learning from this? Well, it turns out to use social network analysis, you actually have to do a little bit of sociology and be interested in looking at bridges and connections and clucks and clusters. And so I went out to MITH, the Maryland Institute for Technology and the Humanities at the University of Maryland. I was based at GW at George Washington University. I went out to MITH, and I also went to the Human Computer Interaction Lab. Ben Schneiderman, who wrote with Derek Hansen and Mark Smith, wrote the NodeXL program. So I went and interviewed them, and I showed them my work, and they got pretty excited. They didn't know it could work for ancient history and so forth. And we had a really productive conversation, and it sort of sent me back to thinking about different kinds of problems and what I might be able to see with these charts. So I went home, and after a while, I began to input as an attribute the ethnicity, or where they came from, all these different people that Alexander the Great knew, because he started in Macedonia, he conquers Greece, then he goes out through modern Turkey, ancient Anatolia and the Persian Empire, conquers modern Jordan, Israel, Syria, Egypt, then Iraq, Iran, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan. All right, he encounters quite a lot of different people, and I thought it would be interesting kind of to see how many different peoples he met. So this spiral allowed me to see proportion, that is that the Macedonians comprised the largest quantity of ethnic people that Alexander was connected to, and then secondly, the Persians. Thirdly, the Greeks, although it's a little skewed, if you counted Thessalians and Spartans as Greeks, which we would, I was able to sub-parse out little parts of the Greeks and give them their own identities, which diminishes the larger Greek as a whole. Anyway, it was kind of an interesting thing to do, to visualize the quantities of different ethnic groups that Alexander came into contact with. And when I sort of shrunk down and collapsed the groups, I was then very much able to see the proportions of peoples and how they were linked and interlinked to each other across that country, topologically, not topographically, which was interesting. And then I thought about some of these other problems that have plagued Alexander's scholarship. So for example, there were these small rebellions that would happen periodically. It would usually start with someone in the close circle getting kind of hostile or angry and say that he didn't think it was right that Persians, the people we've conquered, should be elevated to such high status within the close circle of Alexander that we now have to kiss their feet to get to see you. That's usually kind of dialogue that would happen after a long night of drinking. And in fact, Alexander slew with a long pike Black Clitus for saying just that at a dinner party, at the end of a dinner party. So there was this, what we would call a sort of prejudice or bias against the other that comes out through the literature. So then I began to think, well, if we just click on one of these individuals, like Black Clitus, and who does he work with closest according to the sources? Who does he know outside of the Macedonians? Only one Persian, and that's the guy he killed. Another fellow, Conus, who led a rebellion 2 years later, he didn't know anyone or work closely with anyone from any other ethnicity but his own. Hephaestion, on the other hand, who was Alexander's best friend, perhaps lover, closest ally, and advocate, he worked with a great number of people, similarly to Alexander, from different cultures, and supported him in his efforts to create this unity of mankind. So what I learned from this is that I was able to see things through the visualization, the data visualization, that I could not have seen reading linearly in my texts where this data came from. And that, to me, was the big takeaway for digital humanities research for me. So going back to my question then, I get to the campus, I'm like, where are my faculty? Who can I find? I need to find people who are inclined to collaborate. And then the next month, I go to the Chicago Colloquium, really to participate for the first time in your community, because I'd only just started this last summer, right? And I find out, collaborations everywhere. So it convinces me that I really do need to kind of dive in and find out more about the digital humanities at the University of Cincinnati. And what I had been doing was taking down names. Each of those is the name of a professor with their unit, like DAP or ANS, or just history, if that's all I knew. And I started collecting subjects, and this was hand-drawn, like urban studies, people who study urban studies in Haiti, or in downtown Cincinnati. They all got on the list, right? So I started collecting those kinds of topics, and pretty soon I went, what other tools are there to find a collaborator? So on the East Campus, which is our medical school, we have a really nice Find a Collaborator tool. It's in the gray bar, Find a Collaborator, search terms, and you can type in whatever search term you want, and it will draw from mainly people's CVs, right? And pull up a nice list for you of people who could be your collaborators. What do we have on the West Campus? Each of us, when we arrive at the university, has to input in their format your CV. It's called eProfessional. It's a kind of database, and so it kind of looks like this, just a little bit. It goes on and on, page after page after page of these things that you cannot just scan in your CV. You have to actually type in their boxes. So everyone does this, and presumably they do it so that you can then go to the research tab on the main page, and here is some support for research, and then find a researcher. And I typed in my name, and I get, your search, Diane Cline, did not match any documents. No pages were found containing Diane Cline. Huh, now what? Shoot, it doesn't really work. And so the Office of Research has just invested, I think it's $100,000 to start over, and they're doing a new one. So that didn't help for me. So I began to interview people who do digital humanities. So I went first to my old haunt, which is the classics department. I actually have a PhD in classical archaeology and was a classics professor at the University of Cincinnati up until 2000, but then left to do other things. So I knew that there were programs like the Troy Project, like Serhas, I'll show you an example from Earthworks in a moment, and also the new Pompeii excavations are using iPads, completely iPads, going paperless. There's a lot of paper on excavations. This was paperless, which is kind of amazing. I also, just from looking online, spotted the Ropes lecture series on the digital humanities in 2011-12 and all the people who participated in that. So that was a starting point for me. And all the rest were just from website search. So this is really what it looked like before I started talking to people. And I first went up to Kevin Grace. He's in green in the top. And he's the head archivist. I had read in September that they had started digitizing the photographs of the Cincinnati subway. And you ask, Cincinnati has a subway? And we say, no, but they dug one. There are these tunnels down there, really, really interesting. And this was a project from 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And they've got a lot of photographs of it, and they actually did kind of begin to dig it, and then they stopped. And so it's interesting for a lot of different disciplines. So I went to interview him. I talked to John Walrott, who's sort of a big node there. And it began to snowball. Jim Rodolfo is on leave, but he worked at the MSU, Michigan State University Digital Humanities Center, as a graduate student and got a lot of experience. And so I was able to talk to him on Skype because I think he's going to be actually the most important player. It's just that he's been gone this year. So this is his website. And what's interesting when I start looking at the practitioners is that almost none of their websites have uc.edu URLs. They are housed elsewhere because we don't have a center yet, right? We don't have that platform that we need. So he's done this work in collaboration with a Michigan State person who's the user experience researcher and systems designer there for their center, called the Samaritan Archive 2.0 project. And it's very interesting. They've got these texts of the Bible. They're working with biblical scholars, but they're also working with modern day Samaritans. Those are the stakeholders, Samaritans, and the family that owns these texts. And this is the collaboration scheme. Other examples that I just sort of found as I was searching for partners, again, this one is not housed at UC. It's employees.oneonta.edu. So it's housed at SUNY College at Oneonta in New York, because Christopher Aucoin is now at UC, but he did this kind of project beforehand when he was at SUNY. And so he's tracking dinosaurs. This part of it in particular is his, looking at their footprints and tracking them digitally and putting them in GIS systems. And another one, again, no uc.edu. This one was done relatively recently by a journalism professor, Alyssa Yancey, Cincinnati Stock Exchange, and she just made it their project to learn about the Cincinnati Stock Exchange that closed in 1989, I think, and they found old footage. They went through the building, a gorgeous building, as you can see. They interviewed people who used to work there, and that was, and this website is the end product of that class. And earthworks, as I mentioned before, were very early experiments in sort of flyover reconstructions of archaeological sites. And it was a collaboration between John Hancock in DAP, in the College of Architecture, Art and Planning, and the archaeologists and anthropologists that were working in the Ohio Valley. So let me see if I can, oops, double click on the video. Where's the cursor? Oh, there it is. And these were done, mind you, in like 1990. These are sorry, 1998 or so. They're pretty early for digital work. So this is the site of Troy, ancient Troy, which is one of the University of Cincinnati excavations. No sound, but it's sort of a flyover reconstruction of the site. They also have all the Indian mounds in Ohio. You get the idea. So after a few months, then by January, I'd done some more charting. The cluster we were just talking about, the Troy project, John Hancock, Earthworks, all here in orange. The geography, geology, GIS project of the dinosaurs represents the green there. Let's see. Digitizing subway is up at the top in blue in the center. And I just discovered a lot more clusters of faculty and people who were working along with the library. The library nodes are all in the dark blue. And the red here on the right is all sort of English journalism comp lit. And then Alyssa Yancey, who did the Cincinnati Stock Exchange, she is actually connected also to this new media bureau within journalism, and Bob Jonason does similar kinds of projects, and that I didn't know earlier. So what if they were all sort of connected to each other? What if? Because when they're not sure if you can see, there is only one bridge, Alyssa, that connects sort of this whole thing, Alyssa and Jay, to the rest of the university. And likewise, classics is sort of floating out by itself and is connected only really virtually through GIS, because they both use GIS, geography, and archaeology, but they don't actually know a person in the other that they work with or collaborate with. And likewise, we have a lot of dyads and triads that kind of float out on their own, doing their own experiments. So what would it be like to be interconnected, to be linked, to have play space in common? This is another way to look at the different clusters. So the library, again, in the upper left, GIS, geography, anthropology, communications also, because they play in Second Life together with some of those others in the green. The red being English, comp lit, rhetoric, technical professional writing, journalism, all in the red zone. CCM, which is one of our creative arts partners, they do videography and filmmaking primarily. We also have a strength in the DAP area for DAP digital courses. So these, if they were put together or linked together, could be the core of our expertise for helping students do digital humanities work. And this is with and without the Dean and the University of Cincinnati Library digital collections. So without, they're all sort of floating. With, they're a little bit more connected. And when I shrank down, collapsed the groups, you can see there's a little bit of connection right now, but most of them are floating on their own. So this brings us to January, where we were awarded a Mellon Foundation grant. And my understanding is that our Dean Shimo Wang, has hired Lisa Spiro to be our consultant. So we're just beginning to launch with this. I showed the associate dean, the associate provost, no, vice provost for undergraduate affairs, these charts, and she took them over to the libraries, and then I got called in to talk with him and them about what I saw. And now they, with this grant, are able to actually begin to build some common ties and think about a collaborative center in the digital humanities. And the person that's going to be really vital to linking us to our resources and helping us think about our strategies is here with us, Cheryl Albrecht in the second row. So if you have advice, comments, support, just give her your card, okay? Everybody give her your card. Raise your hand, Cheryl. All right. So this is what it looked like last week. I changed up a little bit the formatting, and it hasn't, I haven't expanded it all that much, but it's a little bit easier to see the difference that the library makes in this play space. If all of these individuals and centers are doing digital scholarship, or digital pedagogy from that matter, and this is what it looks like once you add all the library's projects and people. We just have a little bit more to do, really, to kind of bring it all together. So for my own network, I now have about 200 faculty who've either attended my workshops or have been working in collaboratives or centers or are teaching for me or have expressed interest in just getting on my mailing list. So the largest group is from Arts and Sciences and from DAP, which is the Design, Architecture, Art. We also have engineering playing a pretty big role, our School of Education. These are administrators, and it's important, right, to get buy-in from the administration. So we're happy to have a lot of them in our network. And as far as this year went, we got 17 projects proposed, and that consisted of 55 faculty for just 17 projects. So there were at least 2 or 3 per project from 13 different units or colleges. So DAP had the most, but Arts and Sciences in red is a close second. This is the School of Education, School of Engineering. The libraries, 3 librarians are on the team teaching for us. 2 staff, one from the Women's Center and one from Disability Services, are in the faculty for these projects. 3 from CCM, the Music and Arts, Medical School. These are our 2 satellite campuses, our branch campuses. You see Blue Ash and the Claremont campus, which we're really happy that we reached that far. College of Business, and so on, nursing. But look what happens now. Those are when they're all in their silos, playing nicely in their normal little boxes. But when you add in just the links of who's teaching with whom, this is what the network looks like. They're still in their places in their boxes, but look what we've done, right? It's kind of amazing, kind of amazing. And looked at another way, and with the collapsed clusters. So we're actually unifying the faculty, which is really an exciting experiment. Just beginning. So I link, therefore I am greater than I am alone, is one way to think about it. And the other is E.M. Forster's only connect. That was the whole of her sermon. Only connect the prose and the passion, and both will be exalted, and human love will be seen at its highest. Live in fragments no longer. Thank you, everybody. That was great. I should put a plug in for the Network Weaver Handbook. June Hawley lives in Akron, I believe, in Ohio. And she is a professional consultant who has this great website, www.networkweaver.com. And I bought this handbook at the beginning in October, and it's sort of my Bible. It's for practitioners of organizational development primarily, you know, who want to create strong, smart networks in their communities. But I'm experimenting with trying it on faculty. So I encourage you to check out her website and her articles. They're really, really interesting. She worked with Valdez Krebs, and it's good. It's good network analysis, and it's just good stuff. Questions? Yes, in the back.
Where did you get the data for the Alexander degrees?
Well, in last spring, I taught a course on Alexander, and we went through all the primary sources. He has about 4 good biographies plus 2 more that exist from antiquity. Arrian's Life of Alexander, Justin's Epitome of Pompeius Trogus, Diodorus Siculus, the histories, so forth. So that would have taken, I think, about a year to input every relationship that we see. So instead, I cheated and went to Valdemar Heckel's Who's Who in Alexander's World, which is one of these great reference volumes that has pages of biographies. So I was really looking at just the top people that they had ties with, not every little, you know, muleteer or flute girl or other kinds of relationships that Alexander and his men had.
On that, what was that free software that you said that you mentioned in the very beginning, which I didn't write down, and I'd love to know what that was?
Sure. She's asking what the software was. It's called NodeXL, NodeXL. And it's available from Codeplex, CODEPLEX.nodexl.com. Mm-hmm. And it only works with PCs. And authorized Microsoft Excel. Anyone else? I know it's break time, so. Okay, thanks.